Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome to this episode of Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians. I'm your host, Estela Ronova, talking to you about a topic that keeps coming up in my conversations with clients, with humanitarians, about micromanaging. And I'm pretty sure that this is a topic that is discussed in many other areas outside of the humanitarian sector. But of course, I will be speaking only or focused on humanitarian world. And here are the things that I will be discussing. So one is what it is. So we have a bit of a clear understanding of what it is, and therefore I would love for you to define your own definition of how or what you think is micromanagement. I will give you my definition, and then I will talk about how do you know that you might be doing it, or you might be subjected to such micro behaving, what is it called, behavior, right? And why it is and the consequences of it, and of course, what we can do both from the side of micromanaging and from the side of who's being micromanaged and what we can do together. So let's start with the first definition of micromanagement. And from what I have been hearing from discussing with so many people, this is what I hear we mean when we say micromanagement. And therefore, please feel free to also have your own definition of how you see what micromanagement is, because depending on what your definition is, you will be able to also decide what to do with it, right? So the way that I have been hearing from my humanitarians, micromanaging is when the manager does the supervisee's or the staff's job fully or partially, right? So these are obviously um, definitions that keep coming up from practice. So the most of the reason why that happens is not because the staff member is absent or staff member is not willing to do, but rather it's happening because of this distrust. That distrust in the staff member's ability, competency, and therefore the manager just coming out and doing all the work or some of the work. So let's talk about how do you know that this is happening, right? So especially as a manager, I think many of us may not recognize that this is what we're doing. I have been on both sides of things. I have been unfortunately on the side of micromanaging my staff and then realizing that's not what I should be doing. That cost me a lot of problems. And I have been also on the other side of this coin, which is when I was micromanaged by my supervisor and suffering a lot from those sides. So therefore, a lot of this have been the experiences that I have gathered from coaching my clients, myself, and therefore your experience might be different. But here are the common themes that I see in terms of when we are micromanaging and what are the belief systems behind for why we micromanage, right? So belief systems that we usually have is something like, I am better, faster than the staff member, right? So this is the perspective of the micromanager, if you will, right? So the belief system that runs that behavior of micromanaging is because we believe that we're better, we are faster, we can do things easier, we can do things at one go, whatever it is that we believe, and therefore we want to do things on our own, right? And the message behind this is therefore the other person can't or not willing to, or whatever it is that we believe to be true. The other thing that we tend to do a lot is we tend to compare ourselves to when we were in their role. And I think this damages a lot as well as to how we do things and how we treat the other person. We tend to think like we used to be better back in the day when we were doing that role. or we used to do things differently, or we used to put more effort than the other person's putting. So in other words, the message is that back in the day when we were doing their job, we used to be better. So therefore now we're judging the other person for not being the way that we believe they should have been or they should, but they're not, right? So that's not helping our behavior either, and therefore making us not trust the other person, not like wanting the other person to be in a particular way and therefore believing that they're not, and therefore we may as well do the job. And then the other common belief system that oftentimes does not even sound like a belief system, we just say, well, there are deadlines, we can't just keep getting this back and forth, I can't just wait, I can't just keep working on this to improve this together. So therefore, I may as well. And then we just take over and then do the thing. And all of this have this hidden message, which I think we don't often realize, which is really when we say these things, what we're saying is that they're not as good as we are. They're not as fast as we are. They're not whatever as we are, right? Therefore, us feeling better or us feeling more competent, us feeling whatever it is that we feel that will get the job done instead of doing that with the other person. Right? So this is, and I think again, as I'm saying that, I don't think as managers, we like consciously think about these things in terms of course, I'm better than others and therefore I'm doing this work kind of thing. But I think that a lot of the times like unintentional or subconscious parts of this comes out like this, and therefore we tend to want to do the micromanaging work of doing the work of the other person, whether fully or partially, right? What we then feel when we think these beliefs, right, when we have these expectations or when we believe these, what we feel is we feel frustrated. We feel especially frustrated at the other person, right? We feel like they should have been this way, they should have done this, they should have this competency, all of this, and we feel they don't, and therefore we feel frustrated at them. We blame them for not doing their things together or for not putting the enough effort or not spending whole night not sleeping and then delivering the thing. Whatever it is, we blame them, and then we also don't say that to them in terms of this is what we're feeling, this is what we're thinking, and therefore I'm blaming you, or and therefore we just don't say all of these things, and we just like continuously resenting this experience, resenting how things are going. And therefore, in order not to feel any of these, or maybe actually because we feel all of these, then we start micromanaging. We start doing the things because we just feel like impatient. We don't want to be impatient, and we have like 1,000 other things. So obviously, we don't have time for this anymore, and therefore we want to do this micromanaging thing, right? So this is how you recognize when you are doing micromanaging. And even if you don't feel like you're doing micromanaging, like get curious as to whether any of the tasks, any of the areas, or maybe with some of your staff members, you might be doing this, and why are you doing this? So get curious about your own belief system because of which you might be doing it. So now let's look at the why that is, right? Why we micromanage. Again, I think many of the ways that we try to micromanage is, I think it somehow comes from a good intention, we believe, right? But this is what's happening really, is that when we micromanage, we are essentially believing that the person who's supposed to do this job, who's supposed to deliver this work, we believe they won't be able to do this as well or as fast as we want them or we think is possible, because we don't think they are capacity or they are competences at the level that we think they should be. And therefore, we just want to do things ourselves, right? And what we don't do in those moments when we're micromanaging is, I think, something interesting for every one of us to look at it is when we are micromanaging, we are not really thinking about how this experience for the other person, right? This is my own lessons for myself as well. So in no way I'm judging anyone. Please hear me, like, all of this was said with love and with harsh truths because I have learned it myself and I continue learning it. And one of the main things that I have learned is that when I'm micromanaging, I'm not thinking about how it is the experience for the other person, for the staff member who is interacting with me, who is doing this work with me, right? Because in those moments when I'm believing all of these things, about the job, about the other responsibilities, of other deadlines, and this being one of them, and then getting frustrated that the other person is not doing all the things that I think they should have. When I'm doing all of these, I'm not really thinking oftentimes about the person who is directly interacting with me and how their experience is of working with me, how their experience is of doing this work with me, right? And then I'm also not thinking really about how best to teach them, how best to coach them, right? The teaching is we take a material and we digest it into small pieces and then teach them in the way that's perceivable by the other person and then applicable. Coaching is when we get them to realize on their own of what are the answers could be to the problems that we're trying to solve together and how best they think they can solve it without our minimal or without our involvement or with minimal involvement, right? So that's the difference. We're not also thinking about empowering them to learn from this experience. And I think most likely we're not also thinking about the long term uh, prospect of how we want this person then to evolve and go and be like thinking about the next assignment that we'll be doing. That if we get this assignment, this task clear and that the staff member learns from it in terms of how we do things or what we do things and standards and whatever not, then the next time it will be less things to work on and it will just continue improving, right? And we're not thinking about those situations because we are frustrated and blaming and we're wishing things were different, basically, right? And I think recognizing that is so crucial. And when we recognize that, then we start thinking, okay, is this really the time we're spending on those frustrations and blaming and disappointment of how the other person should have done this and didn't do and all of this? Or we then realize what are the things we're not teaching? What are the things we're not coaching on? What are the things that we could do? And this all needs to come from this trusting place, right? Or at least from this belief that we can do these things in the way that doesn't cost us too much nerves and too much energy, emotional well-being, right? And that's, I think, the part that we're not really paying attention to that I really wanted to highlight here is how it is from the staff's perspective. And as I said, I have been on both sides, right? So that's why, I mean, all of these things that I'm talking about, I have done it myself. Unfortunately, also many times I have done it not knowingly and I have learned my lessons. But I think in some of the cases, maybe it was too late to learn my lessons. But I also want to now highlight how it could be the perspective of the staff member for us to keep that in mind every time when we're coming to that discussion with the blaming energy, with the resentful energy, with the passive aggressive energy, or with the distrusting energy, how it's felt by the staff member as well. Because we often believe that when we do those things and we micromanage, we try to have this like very neutral and poker face type of face some of the times, believing the other person will not know or not get it. But what is interesting is that I think human beings have, from evolution, have this ability to sense without the words, without the expressions, we can still sense the feeling of the other person or whatever the energy of the other person. We may not know and articulate it, but we sense there's something going on, right? So we're very well attuned as human beings for this. So therefore, let us consider when someone is being micromanaged, how are their perspective? So they probably feel bad either about themselves, depending on if they have self-confidence issues, right? So they make it mean about themselves and say, oh my God, I'm not a good professional. I didn't do my job. I suck at this, da, 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 all of these things. In addition to their own self-critical thoughts, probably, that was certainly my case. And or they may be feeling bad about you, meaning, or about the experience about you, that, oh my God, this person sucks, or this person does not appreciate me, does not really value my work, or does not even see what I'm trying to do. I have spent all of this time. And then they start building up these confirmations of whatever they already believe, or confirmations of creating stories about you or about themselves, right? Confirmations of their belief system might be, excuse me, they were trying hard to show that they can improve and they can do something. But then the external feedback came that said, well, you are not good at this anyway, or whatever the message might be that they perceived. And then they may just confirm, well, you see, I couldn't learn. I'm not good at this anyway. Now another person is confirming to me, no matter how much I try, it will not work, right? So these are just confirmations of the biases that the person has or the limitations that the person has. They just confirm it with this experience and after experience, and therefore they will not be wanting to even try, because our brains always, when they get the confirmation, we just use it as a way to say, well, what's the point of trying again harder or trying differently? Because if we tried this time, it didn't work, obviously it won't work next time, right? That's the confirmation I'm talking about. So they will be confirming a lot of things about their competencies or about your competencies as a manager, right? They may also be a lot in the blaming energy and feeling demotivated for doing all the things and then not worse in the end anyway, not learning anything from it. And then they may distrust you, and therefore, and also they may resent you for not being able to say all the things they want to say to you as a manager, right? And then they just don't learn from any of this experience, but focus on the blame, on the distress, on the frustration, just like as a manager do. And I will be comparing both perspectives at some point so you can see. This is the next one. Yes. So you can see how it is the perspective, like when micromanaging behavior occurs, how it is the perspective for both sides. And I really wanted you to have this awareness. And the reason why I want to do that is so that this experience, whatever the micromanaging experience, it becomes lose-lose situation for both sides and no one gets better outcomes out of it, basically. So let's compare those perspectives of the micromanager first. If we are micromanaging and then we see that things are not the way that we think they should be, then we feel frustrated, right? We blame the other, we distrust, meaning that I can't trust this person now to be doing all the other tasks. So we feel like we waste time by redoing all the things ourselves. We could have done it earlier without delegating and all the things. And we just label the other person as not competent, not good, whatever it is. And therefore, notice that we then don't have the willingness to teach them, to coach them in the future. And even if we do that, we do this out of, well, I know that you cannot do this anyway, but I will just do it because it's part of my job kind of thing. Do you see what I'm saying? The staff's perspective when they are micromanaged is they feel frustrated for being micromanaged. right? And notice that if you were as a manager, right, if you were micromanaged by your supervisor or whoever above you, you would be frustrated equally or maybe more. So therefore, it's like whatever the thing that we're doing to someone else, we are likely to get the same treatment from someone else. And that's how crazy the life is. So therefore, I think when like people talk about karma and all of these things, maybe you don't believe it, which is fine, but just notice that whatever we do to other human beings, we also along the line receive from someone else. And therefore, if we don't want to receive the micromanaging behavior from our supervisors, then maybe we shouldn't be doing that to others either, right? So we continue the staff's perspective when they are micromanaged, right? They blame themselves or they blame others. By the way, micromanagers could also blame themselves, but I think that tends not to happen very often. But in the case of the staff member, they're likely to blame themselves or they blame the supervisor or the manager. They equally distrust the manager for not trusting them, right? Because trusting is the feeling that we tend to mirror a lot as human beings. So therefore, if we receive the distrusting behavior from someone else, we're likely to reciprocate that knowingly or not knowingly. We feel like we wasted our time doing this thing when the other person could have done it on their own anyway. So then what's the point of us doing that work, right? And then we label ourselves or the other person as not competent in managing or in doing the work. And therefore, as you can see, they have very mirroring behaviors to each other, right? So when someone micromanages, these are the things happen. And the person on the receiving end may also do the exact same thing as we're doing. And the result will be a loss of people's energy, time, people's feelings of their competencies, and everyone's basically frustrated and pissed. And if that's not the experience we want to create for ourselves and for the other people, then we need to start thinking about what we can do to change this behavior, right? So let's look at from the manager's perspective. The first thing first is we need to change some of those belief systems. And oftentimes we may say things like, well, this is just experience. I understand experience counts a lot, but every time, if we just use those belief systems, oh, they're not going to do this well as I do, or whatever it is, then we will just keep creating for ourselves a lot of more problems, a lot more headache that we actually do not want. Therefore, the best solution, I think, is to get into any operation, any work, any humanitarian sector, whatever it is that you're doing. And if you happen to be managing people, or if you happen to be supervising people, then the best thing is always try to go on the side of believing the other person can do it or can try to do that. And you will do your best to coach them, teach them along the way. And therefore, changing your expectation that whatever they will come with, whatever their competency level currently is, expect that that's how it's supposed to be. Don't expect that to be, oh, this is this position and your level is very low or whatever it is, because there's no point in doing that conversation. There's no point in indulging in that, no matter what, right? Even if, let's say, objectively that person is not qualifying to that position, you or someone chose it, right, to be in that position. Even if you didn't choose it, which is very possible, right? So you are a new manager, you came to this position, and you have all these staff members that you're working with. Even if you didn't choose it, but the system or the organization chose it, chose this person. Therefore, indulging in my expectation of you is this and you're not delivering is not useful. So don't do that to yourself. Not for the sake of the other person. Don't do that to yourself. I know it's not easy, but the best way you can always try to go to is, okay, I want to believe that they're capable of getting to this competency level or to this, whatever the standard you think that is possible. Always go to, I want to believe. If you don't believe, then I want to believe at least will be like the opening door to you getting curious as to how you can empower, how you can coach them, how you can get them to understand, to do the work so that the next time you have less work and next time less work, and that's how it goes, right? So that's why always think about, okay, if I could believe or if I want to believe that they are capable of and they have competency to do XYZ, then how would I teach them? How would I coach them? What would I do? What are the ways that I could keep them going into the next level of their growth that they want to go to? And then how can I also focus on the principles of the matter, meaning that what is the messages that we're trying to get in that document? What is the messages we're trying to send in that meeting? What is the focus that we're trying to get across and advocate? Focusing on that first, meaning the meat of the matter, right? And then all the rest of how the grammar should be, how the wording should be, how the way it's written, all of this can be the next thing. Because as long as people understand, if their understanding is different than you are trying to understand or you are thinking, then having that both like the same level of understanding, same wavelength of understanding will then help shape the rest of the things. But as long as that part is missing, then this standard will be like a nitty-gritty things that we're working together, but in the end, you just want to redo things anyway, right? So that's why focusing on the principles or the ideas or the messages, whichever the way you want to think about, focusing on that and not on the person or how competent, incompetent, or whatever, but rather if we can discuss and agree on this to be in the report, to be in the I don't know, in the meetings, in the advocacy papers, then everything else we'll figure out afterwards. And of course, expecting that there will be mistakes and failures, I think is key, even though I know that it's so difficult to do. I have been going through some failures recently, and then like every time I'm in this failure, I'm like, ugh, I don't want to be here. And that's normal, I think. So that's why expecting that, yes, we all of this process will have failures and mistakes, and we will somehow go through together. That is, I think, so key. So then we are not pressuring ourselves or the other person and being impatient and just like, why can't you get this? And then we make it personal and then everyone's pissed again, right? And the fourth one is believing all the way that you can teach, that you can coach, you can be that manager that you aspire to be. You can be the manager that you wish you had that type of manager, right? That's always, I think, like key for me that to think about is I want to be the manager that I wished I had, or I want to be the manager like the one that I had who was so amazing, taught me and showed me what kind of manager skill or level is possible. And I want to be that person, and therefore believing that I can be, and also believing the other person that they can go on board and do the things and do the work and all of this. I know it's not easy, but this is, I think, is our time and energy best spent rather than on the blaming, on the resentment, on the frustration, which in the end lead to nowhere or to worsening of the situation. Let's look at the staff's perspective, and I think this is okay. There's one more. The staff's perspective in terms of what we can do as staff members if we're being micromanaged, right? Because it's so easy, as I said, to just be frustrated and disappointed and just keep focusing on that or blaming the other person and focusing on that and not do anything to solve the problem or just to keep avoiding solving the problem. That's so easy, it sounds, but also so difficult for ourselves for how we experience the work situation. It also is difficult to advocate and do the work that we want for other people because now everything becomes about us and the other person instead of being about the cause that we're fighting for, right? So that's why, as a staff member, what we can do is we can believe that we can learn from this experience. We can also learn from this manager, and if we don't really are highly of opinion of the manager, at least tell ourselves that we can learn from this experience. We can always also learn from managers of what not to do, right? That's always something we can learn. And I have also seen people who have learned from their managers, and now actually they may even go swing to the other side of not really caring or not really looking at the documents and just sending as they are and then just showing the staff members, I just trust you fully and I don't even need to look at things. And that might be another extreme that maybe we don't really go there either, because then again, there is no learning happening for both sides, right? But notice that when you're learning from other managers in terms of what to do and what not to do, also not to swing to the other extreme, right? So there will always needs to be a sweet balance for ourselves, and we need to, but all of us individually find that balance. So therefore, starting with believing that you can learn from the manager, we can learn from the experience, will be always getting you open-minded, curious, and doing something every time, even if you fail, even if you make mistakes. And then again, the same thing goes for us as staff members, right? Focusing on the principles versus the manager, focusing on what is it that we're trying to achieve here? What is it that we're getting out of this and the end, instead of making this about the manager, making it about ourselves, and then just being in this turmoil. Learning the standards on our own or with the manager, whichever the way, because every organization will have their own standards, right? Standards of what kind of letters can go out to the world, what kind of wording we use, what kind of templates we use, whatever the standard may be. It's always important to learn them because we're part of that system, we're part of that organization, whether we like it or not. We have signed the contract, we chose to be there. And therefore, we may as well learn what their standards are and how we're going to comply with them. We also need to expect the failures, like I said. And also, I know that it's not easy, as I said, right? But one of the ways that you can always expect failures is that that's the only way you can learn. That's the only way you learn better, if you make the mistake or if you make the whatever the you define failure, that might be the only way you learn. Or you might learn that you need to be attentive next time, whatever it is, your lessons, that will be the only way. And then believing that you can make it a skill development exercise, this task, believing that you can make it so that you learn or develop your skill, whatever the skill might be, the skill of writing, skill of conveying the message in the concise and powerful, potent way, skill of working with the manager who's a micromanager, but you're trying to get their focus shift to what the matter is at hand instead of blaming. So you could actually be in the leading role in that as well. So you can learn so much from that experience of getting the manager to see how they might be micromanaging and how it might not be their intention, and you pointing out to them with a very much respectful way can always get them a wake-up call, right? And when I say that, and I will be saying this now in another way, when I say this for both sides, right, for the manager and for the staff member, when we are honest as much as possible to be saying, pointing out things to the other person, which I think is part of the coaching, is also to say, for instance, as a manager, we could say, yes, we have been working through this document together. Let's say we're working on a document together and we're trying to improve it. And then if we see that there is no interest from the other side or there is no effort from the other side, then we can also point that out and say, I have this sense that you're not interested or you're not really wanting to put your effort in this, and I would like to know why. From this caring, wanting to understand place as a manager. Now, imagine if you are a staff member and the manager is trying to micromanage. The same way, from this honesty, we can point out things and say, I have been trying my best to do this work and learn from this experience. And I also trust that you want to teach me and coach me through this experience. But also, I have this feeling from time to time that you just want to do it on your own because you don't want to be waiting for me to improve and do this work. And I don't think that's your intention, but I want you to know that's my experience of this work, right? Imagine if we were able to do this to each other. We were able to tell each other honestly or to the maximum honesty possible, with respect, with care, say this to each other. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I love coaching is that that's where this type of very honest conversations, the honest reflection of what's going on, happen, right? That can also happen in the work environment. Because again, in the end, I think both of our goals as a staff, as a manager, to do the work well so that the people who are needing our assistance get the assistance they need, right? That's the whole purpose of us all doing this. That's not the purpose of um, making the donors happy or making the supervisor happy, even though that's great. But all of this effort in the end is so that the donors can give the money, so that we can give the assistance to people, so that the people who have already suffered from war and from conflicts, from disasters, they get the need they need, they get the help they need, so that they don't have or experience extra or additional struggles. That's the whole purpose, right? So therefore, instead of being afraid the whole time that the manager will write the very bad review and then I will just suffer, therefore I will just stay in resentment and not do anything and then just suffer through, you are already creating the experience for yourself where you're suffering. From manager's review, probably you will not suffer much or you will suffer equally, right? So you are already creating that experience for yourself. So why do that when you can have this conversation with your manager and then just being honest and saying, this is what's happening, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm perceiving, and I would like us to decide what to do with it and bring a solution to the table, right? Not from this blaming place, not from attacking or aggressive place again, right? But I said from this very, even if nervous, but very caring and respectful place to say, this is what I'm experiencing. I feel like you want to micromanage, or I feel like you want to just do my job, but I would like to do it and learn from it. And I would like for you to coach me in this to help me to increase or improve my skills. And therefore, if we keep this tense conversation or if we keep this tense relationship, then I don't think we'll get far and we'll just be frustrated. This would be how I suggest you could consider handling. And I would like for you to think about what would be the most or possible way to be honest and point out how you're experiencing the situation and giving this feedback to your manager. How would you do that? How would you do that? That would be authentic and like real to you, how you would do that in the way that you want to solve the problem. The same way, if you're a manager, if you were able to say this, point out how you experience a staff member in their way of doing things and trying to understand why they're doing this. Maybe they don't believe that they are capable of doing this well anyway, right? Then how can we coach them through that? Maybe they feel like they have, even if they do it, it will not be heard. How can we work through that and bring solutions? That I think is the only way we can improve the micromanaging situation instead of both sides feeling all of this resentment and anger and passive aggressiveness and not do anything about it or keep avoiding doing anything about it and just pretending everything's okay when we know deep down everything is not okay. So, my dears, if you want to get coaching on either being the a micromanager who does not want to be a micromanager anymore, or being the staff member who has this ability to confidence to talk to the manager about what's going on, how to improve, then absolutely come coach with me. I would love to coach you, go through this experience to learn so much and make differences in your work environment. Have a beautiful week. I'll talk to you very soon.